And welcome to this problem where we are going to dive into count mention per user. So basically, to summarize what has been said here, you receive a couple of events and you have two main type of event. The first type of event is message, which actually mention a certain number of user. We have three way of mentioning people, and you can mention a list of user. That means you can mention user 1, user 2, and user 3. You can mention every online user by using the keyword year. That will mention every online user. And you can mention everyone. That means no matter if you are online or not. So those are the three ways of mentioning people using the event message. And then now you have the other event, which is offline. And offline indicate a user that is going online offline for a certain period of time. Now the goal here is to just count the number of mention a user has received within throughout the execution of the program. That is what you should do here. So if you need to count the number of mention, that means this is the main guy. Now the question is, if I want to count all mention, it's actually easy. If I have 10 people and we mention all of them are going to be increment by 1. That is simple for the all. Now if I receive a list of users that has been mentioned, this is also easy. You just look through the number of people that has been mentioned and then you increment the number of count. And it has been said here that if the user is mentioned many times, you should count many times. That means if, for instance, we mention, let me get an example where we have mentioned here. If, for instance, here we mention ID1, ID0, and ID1 again, you are going to increment the user 1 twice and the user 0 one time. So this one also is easy to compute the number of mention. Now the one that is a little bit tricky is this one, the year, because if you want to mention every user that is year, we need to know if we need to have a scenario where we can know if a user is available or not at the position that the message has been sent. So to handle this, which is a little bit tricky, what I would do is that I will create a unavailability map, which is actually a map that will say, okay, whenever a user is going off, I will just store that. That means if a user is going off at, if let's say maybe user one maybe is going off at position 10, I'm going to say, okay, user 1 is going to have the unavailability from 10 to 61. If again user 1, this is my way of doing, maybe you can do it maybe better, is again unavailable at position, maybe say let me say 41, just an example. You can wait, I don't know if I don't know if it's possible for user to overlap, but even if they overlap, there's no problem with the approach I'm going to use. So let me take, even a user is unavailable at time 41. What will happen here is that it's just going to push at the end of this. So we are not going to have 10, 69, and then now we are going to have 41, and then now you do 41 plus 60, which is 101 minus 1, so this one is 100. Now this is one way of doing this. By doing this, you know that okay, you have an array of pair where you can check if the time is between any of these, that means the guy is unavailable. And if there is no, if the guy is available at the time that we receive the year, then we can increment that guy. This is one way of doing it. You can even choose to, if you don't want to make the plus 60 minus 1, you can just do the plus 60, and then when you are actually computing the value, you just make the less instead of less of equal. So what will implementation of this will look like? The first thing that I would do is to have the unavailability map I was mentioning. I decided to go with the plus 60 because I didn't want to go plus 59. So this is the unavailability map. Once I have the unavailability map, as I was saying, if I receive the all, which is actually easy, you just increment every one by one. You can even optimize this by just count the number of all and increment at the end. But the boundary are really like low, so it's not a big deal. Now, if you receive a year, this is the tricky part. I will explain this at the end. Now, if you receive a list of user, you just look through the list of user, and then you increment each of the ID that you have in the list of user. Now, for the unavailable for the year, the first thing you need to do is to get the time. That means, okay, the year has been specified at a given time, that is called time. Now, for each of the user, so I'm looping through my array of user availability or my map of user availability. I initially consider a user to be available, and if I'm looping and I have a range that is user is not available that contain this time, I just set the availability to be 0 and I break. That is the straightforward approach of this. And by doing this, you are 100% sure that you are going to have a successful result. This is actually a brute force implementation, just direct implementation. Now you can optimize by doing what I was just mentioning here. You can do this. That is one way of optimizing. Yeah, this is my approach of solving this. I hope you do enjoy it. Feel free to give me any input. I'll be really happy to interact with you regarding this. See you tomorrow for a new video. Take care, and don't hesitate to really give your point of view on this.